Okay, class, today we'll look at part 2 for Python basics. And today we'll use examples to show how to use if structure and the loop structure. So we'll create a new Python file. Here we'll start with the first topic is if structure. If structure means that if the requirement or condition is met, and then we will execute a block of code. So if the condition not met, and then we'll not execute the block of code. So in order to set up if structure, the first thing we need to learn is about comparison operators. For example, if we set two variables, one is A, the other is B, and then we can compare the two values by using comparison operator. For example, here A greater than B. We know that A is less than B in this case. So if we run it, the comparison operator will return false. And then that will serve as a condition for if structure. And there are other comparison operators, for example, greater than B. Now here's less than B, say A less than B, and that is true. We can also check whether A equal to B or not. So use double equal to check whether A equal to B or not, which is a false. So many people may misuse double equal with single equal. Single equal means it will assign the value B to A. So if you do this, it will not return true or false. What you do is we'll change the value of A into B. So if you check A again, A become 2. So that's the thing I want to you notice that when you use comparison operator, use double equal. Okay, if not equal in Python is exclamation mark plus equal. We will check whether A is not equal B. If not equal B, we return true. Because we have changed A's value to 2, so now A equals B. If this check is not equal B, then you return false. Okay, and then there are other operators, like you can use less than or equal to B, or greater or equal to B. Okay, and then that's 6 operators for comparison. And in condition check, we might also need logic operators like and, or. Okay, for example, if we have 3 variables, let's see, A, B, C. A equals 1, B equals 2, C equals 3. And then we can check multiple comparisons, like A less than B and B less than C. And then here we use and. And means that both sides must be true, then it is true. So in this case, A less than B and B less than 3, that's true, both are true, so it will return true. So if one of them is false, it will return false. For example, here I said that A less than B and B greater than C, so we know that B greater than C is false, then it will return false. If we use OR with another logic operator, then we can set up as A greater less than B, or B greater than C. Here we use OR operator. It means that if one side is true, then it will return true. So with logic operator and OR, and then we can make multiple conditions together and serve as a condition for if statement. Okay, and we can also write multiple comparison operator together. For example, A less than B, B less than C is also allowed. This is also allowed in Python. We know that this is not allowed in C or C++, but in Python this is allowed. So it's equivalent to the command shown here, use AND operator. Also, many of you may notice that when I assign value to ABC, I use comma to separate variables, and then equal, and the other side separate the numbers by comma still work for Python. And this equivalent to A equal to 1, B equal 2, C equal 3. It's the same thing. Okay, now with the comparison operators and the logic operators, and then we can go on to look at the if statement. So if statement tells us that if a condition meet, the condition is met, and then it will execute a block of code. So the if statement will start with keyword if. The condition could be any condition. For example, if A greater than B, and then after the condition, so you need to use a colon to show that it will start the block of a command. So we'll go to next line, and with indent, and the indent here is one or more spaces, and they tell that the following, if there's an indent, that means that this line belongs to the block of if command. So that's all. This is another difference from between Python and C and C++. If you are familiar with the other programming languages, in Python use indent to separate the structure or to tell the structure of the command. Okay, so now with indent here, and this command line will belong to the block of an if statement. So here I can print A is greater than B, and you can print multiple lines. As long as there's an indent here, it will belong to the block. So you can write is greater than B again. So if you run this code, because we noted that A here is 1B equal 2, so A greater than B, it's false. If it's false, it will not execute the block of if commands. Therefore, if we want to execute this block, and then we need to change this value, let's see, change value to 3, and then we'll write this code again because 3 greater than 2, and it will print. So so when this code in the block of the if statement finished, you can move the cursor back to the original position without any indent, and then Python will know that the if statement has been finished, and whatever followed that doesn't belong to if anymore. So it will not use the condition to check whether the condition is met or not. And then we'll use a sequential structure again. So for example here, see, if I change a to 1, a 1 less greater than 2 is false, so it will not execute, but it does execute this statement because there's no indent anymore. All right, and then we look at another structure. For if structure, we can put else there. So if it's you put else followed by if, means that if the condition is met, it will execute the if block statement. If the condition is wrong, then it will execute the else statement. So you put else, start from beginning with colon as an end, and then use the indent to tell that this block of else, and then you can print is less than b, and you can do multiple command lines here. So means that when if a greater than b is false, it will execute these 2 lines. Let's run it again. You'll see that after running, it will print a is less than b, a is less than b again. Okay, this is if else structure. There's another if structure, is if and else structure. In this structure, well, that means that if there's a multiple passes instead of 2 or 1, if there's multiple passes, we can use this structure. For example, see, if you have a score which is between 0, you input a score, let's say between 0 to 100, and it will give a grade based on score. The grade is A, B, C, D, and F. So when it's greater than 90 or equal 90 is A, so 80 is B, 70 is C, 60 is D, and the rest is F. So we can use if else, LF and else structure to realize this function, because you'll notice that based on one score, there's a multiple 5 choices and the code can go to. Okay, to realize this, first we need to allow the user to input a score. To input a score, we'll use input function to ask a user to input a score again. So input a score by default is a string. So we need to convert string to a number, then we need to use this eval function. So now we get the score as a number, and then we'll check whether the score greater than 90 or not. If greater than 19, then we print A. If the score greater than 80, and then we print B. And here people may ask a question that if the number if this grade is B, it requires the score less than 19 and the score greater than 80. Yeah, your understanding is true, but here we already exclude score greater or equal than 90, because the first if statement has help us included that score greater or equal than 90. So we don't need this statement anymore. Okay, and then we can continue this design by changing this, check the score value greater equal than 70, print C LF score greater equal than 60, print D, and then the rest will be F. Okay, and then we can run the code. Shift Enter, or you can click the run here. The number we can input, let's see that put a number less than 60, it should print F. Run again, 99 should be A. Test it again, 78 should return C. Okay, that means the code works. And here we want to emphasize again that we can use if elif structure to get multiple passes as many as you want, as long as you add elif statement here. So followed by if, there must be a condition, and followed by elif, follow elif, there also need a condition, but for else here you don't need to put the condition here. Okay, now this is a for if structure, and then the second topic for today is the loop structure. That means we will execute a block or commands by many times. And what we'll learn is here is a for loop. We'll use for loop. To start with a for loop, we need to know that a range function in Python. So range function help us set up how many loops we want to set up. So here example, range, let's see that we want to set up loop. Let's start from 1, end at 10, and with interval 1. Okay, I'll write down here the range function has 3 arguments. So we start from 1, the first argument, which will be included, and at 10. Notice here the key information here is 10 will not be included. And the last argument of 1 is interval. So this function can help us to set up a loop, and then we can set a start point, end point, and then we can assign its interval. So the range function will generate a range object, and if you want to look at what's the numbers it generates in this range, you need to use list and then range. Let's see, from 1 to 10 with interval 1. It will generate series numbers, start from 1, which we assigned, and end at 10 but not include 10. So and the interval will be 1. See, if we change the value, see, we change the value from 2, and then we'll start from 2. Change the value from 3, it starts from 3. And the end value, if we change the end value at 12, and we'll end at 12 but not include 12. The interval is 1. We change the interval, let's change the interval to 2, and we will see the interval will become 2, 3, 5, and the 5 plus 2 is 7, and then go all the way up. Okay, by default, the starting point, by default, the starting at 0, and the interval equals 1 by default. So if I only assign y value in range, again, I will use a list to show what number is inside. So you will see that by default it starts from 0, and the interval by default is 1. And then go all the way up to 10 but not include 10. Again, that's very important. And in coding, you need to remember it hardly that the last number will not be included. Now with this range, and then we can use a for loop structure. The for loop will start with the keyword for, and we'll set a variable I equals range, let's see, 10. And then we'll print I. Now I can run this code. Again, for for loop, to end the for loop, at the end of the for loop we have colon, and then follow colon. The following lines it belongs to for loop. There's indent. If you don't put indent here, then this will not be. This doesn't belong to for loop. It will not be executed many times. So now let's run this code. Okay, change I for I in range not equal, and then we'll print 0, 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6. Again, that for I in range not equal, because I equal to a series number that is like for C, C++, or MATLAB. For Python, is use I in range. Sometimes I also get confused because if you using different languages. Write it again. What if I want to print all of them into one line, and then what you can do is use int with comma. So I will not, by default, printer will use the change line special character, and it will change the line. But if you set is end with comma, and this will be put in the same line. Another thing you can do is for I, let's see, in range, see, I can set the starting point as 10, end point as 1, but not include 1, and the interval is -2. Let's print I again, see what's going on. So the first number is 10, as we assigned, and every time I decrease, the interval becomes -2, so it decreased by 2, and all the way to 1 but not include 1. Okay, that's a for loop. And with for loop, and the two very commonly used techniques is counting and summing. Okay, so let's work on counting. For example, if we have a series of numbers and we want to check that how many numbers meet some requirement or meet some condition, and that's called counting. Okay, example show here. Let's see that if we have a series of numbers, and we'll know that how many numbers is greater than some number. Let's set up problem in this way. So if we have 1,000 random number, and the numbers is in range between 1 to 100, and we want to know how many of them is greater than 50. So in theory, if this pure is statistically random, and then there will be 50% of the numbers greater than 50. Right? So to set up the problem, first we need a variable. Let's see that the variable's count is called count. At the beginning 0, and then we will count every time we see that number greater than 50. We'll add 1 to this count. Okay. And also to have 10,000 random numbers, we need a for loop. We'll set I in range 1,000. It will set up 1,000 numbers. And each time we need a random number. So to get a random number, and then we need a package from the random package, and then we'll import random int. The random int is a function in random package that can help you generate a random number, and you can assign the range of random number. Here is 1 to 100. In this case, and they will generate a random number from 1 to 100, which include both 1 and 100. So R will be random number between 1 and 100, which include 1 and 100. And then we'll compare this random number, whether it's greater than 50, not equal. If greater than 50, and we'll add 1 to it, or you can use counter plus equal 1. We'll do the same thing as count equals count plus 1. There's a shortcut to add value to a variable itself. And now, I forget it here. So that's need an if statement. Is if R greater than 50, and then count equals count plus 1. And this put another interesting fact about the structures. So inside the for structure, we have if structure. So for if structure, and then we need actual indent to indicate that this line belongs to if structure. So after all of it, and then we go back to origin. So we go back to origin without any indent means now we come back to the normal sequential structure. And then here we can print count. There are number of we'll put count inside of the curl parenthesis. And to put the count into it, you can use dot format and count, and this count will be put in the will be put in the curl parenthesis. You can see there's a 502 numbers greater than 50. You can keep running it, and this number will fluctuate around 500. Okay, and then we'll look at another technique commonly used when you use for loop, that is summing. For example, if you are asked to do a job that add all the numbers from 1 to 100, summing the numbers from 1 to 100, and you can use a for loop to do it. But before you set up for loop, we need set up variable, let's call it s, to contain the total sum. But at the beginning, before we add any number to it, it must be 0. And then for I in range, because we'll add from 1 to 100, and then that means the range will start from 1 to 100 plus 1, because if you want to include 100, and then we need add one more value for the end, because the end value will not be included. And then colon, now inside of the for loop, s plus equal I. So we add I to s. So after the for loop, and then we print s, and that's our total sum. And we know that from 1 to 100, the total sum will be 50, 50. 5050. Yeah, similar thing that if you want to get the product of serial numbers, we can use a similar technique. And a good example is to calculate factorial. For example, factorial 5 factorial, use exclamation mark in math to represent this is factorial. It's 5 times 4 times 3 times 2 times 1. Well, for 5 factorial is 120. We'll use it later to check our code. Okay, so to calculate factorial, we can use a similar technique. We'll set p as the product, and at the beginning we'll set the value to p. This time we'll not set p as 0. We'll set p as 1, because if you do multiplication, we use 0 times any number, and then it will become 0. If you use 1, and then we times any number, and it will become that number. So here we will use 1 to do multiplication, and then we'll do the same thing, I in range of n. So if n is a number we want to calculate for factorial, see here n equals to 5, what we'll do is, again, we'll start from 1, because we'll not start from 0, because if times 0, it will become 0. And then we'll add 1 to n, because we want to include n. And then we can do the calculation, p equals times equal 1, I, and then we'll do the calculation. So after for loop, print p, we'll get 120. Mathematically, we get the same, theoretically we get the same number, so it means we get the right answer. Okay, we'll stop here. The take-home message for today is we learned if structure. We also learned loop structure, and then that will significantly improve our programming capacity, because we can use condition to change the path of our code, and we also use for loop to execute some command many times we design.